Ignition. And liftoff.
We're in an interesting time for space exploration, where we're seeing a global revival of the space race. Countries are racking up their space mileage. Even smaller countries like Taiwan are getting more of their tech into space. And for the first time, Taiwan is shooting for the moon.
Going to the moon, that's high risk because no one in Taiwan's done that before.
Besides showing that they can, what is the point to all this? Traditionally, when we think about the space race, we think about the US and the Soviet Union back in the 1950s.
You are hearing the actual signals transmitted by the Earth-circling satellite.
The launch of the Sputnik satellite in October 1957 set off this technological and geopolitical contest between the two rival superpowers of the time. Then came US President John F. Kennedy and his pledge to put a man on the moon before the Russians did.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
In terms of showcasing technological strength, very few things match up to making it into outer space. But how do you measure space superiority? Of course, there's successfully sending up a man to walk on the moon, and to this day, the United States is the only one to have done it. But before you send up an astronaut into such a harsh environment, you have to make sure that the spacecraft and all of its components can survive the journey and work. Now, the everyday grind of aerospace lies in something called flight heritage. Now, that's basically a mileage count of a new component or system traveling in space. And that serves as a valuable record to prove that the device works and works reliably under such harsh conditions. Accumulating flight heritage helps inform future missions and builds credibility for the device or payload and its maker. Today, we're seeing a renewed, different kind of space race. China is an active player, having launched hundreds of satellites into space, sending astronauts into space, and putting landers on the moon 4 times. In 2023, India joined that prestigious list, becoming the 4th nation to land on the moon with the Chandrayaan-3 mission.
जी हाँ, आप अपनी स्क्रीन पे देख सकते हैं कि हम लैंडर मॉड्यूल.
At the same time, there's also a booming commercial space sector that has revolutionized the game. That's dominated by SpaceX, whose reusable rockets have significantly cut down on launch costs, making space more accessible. There's also Blue Origin, which has a special focus on space tourism, a market projected to be worth almost $7 billion by 2030. With these private spaceflight opportunities, that means there are more chances for different stakeholders, like smaller countries, to go to space and build up their flight heritage, including Taiwan. Under President Lai Ching-te, making headway in the global space sector is a national mandate.
第二个方向是竞逐太空，探索海洋。
At the heart of Taiwan's space ambitions is TASA, the country's space agency. Established in the 1990s under a different name, TASA has evolved throughout the years and made several achievements for homegrown space tech.
In space sector, we are still emerging nations, but still we have our unique.
Milestones include its flagship Formosat program, a series of satellite launches that started in 1999. The now decommissioned Formosat 1 was a low Earth orbit experimental satellite which launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida on a Lockheed Martin rocket. Now TASA is gearing up to launch Formosat 8 later this year, a high-resolution optical remote sensing satellite.
Okay, so this is our SOCC. It means Satellite Operation Control Center.
I went to visit TASA and spoke with Frank Lowe, who supervises the agency's International Collaborations Office.
Before those components can really become a part of our official space mission. You have to put it in the space to gain the flight heritage.
One project they're currently working on is establishing the flight heritage of this domestically made star tracker, set to be a payload on a rideshare mission on a British satellite by ISM, a subsidiary of BAE Systems. That mission, called Faraday Dragon, is scheduled for launch in 2026.
It's not only accommodate or host Taiwan's components, but also it hosts roughly about 16 payloads from various institutes and different countries. It's something that we have to go through, because actually for TASA, we ourselves, we are thinking about to provide our own ride-sharing program.
Meanwhile, at a university in northern Taiwan, a group of students have sought to gain some flight heritage and experience of their own to arguably one of the hardest destinations in space, the moon, via a collaboration with a Japanese firm.
Falcon 9 carrying IM-2's lunar lander.
Up until now, lunar missions have been dominated by governments. Only governments had the money and resources to get to the moon. But now private companies are working to get in on the game. The Texas-based firm Intuitive Machines became the first private company to land on the moon, and now Japan's iSpace is vying to become the first from Asia. The firm, based in Tokyo, is on a mission of redemption. Back in 2022, it made its first attempt to make it to the moon with the Hakuto R Mission 1.
iSpace's vision is to expand human activity beyond Earth.
Its lander launched from the US that December, and after months of the spacecraft making its way to the moon,
20 meters, final approach. 10 meters. And our simulation might have lost its connection with the MCC. No reason for concern yet. We are still seeing the animation going.
It crashed on the lunar surface after a software bug miscalculated the lander's position.
We have to assume that we could not complete the landing on the lunar surface.
Its second chance came earlier this year. iSpace's new lander, called Resilience, was one of 2 landers to go up on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. That's the first time in history for 2 lunar landers to be carried on the same rocket. And on the Resilience lander is a Taiwan-made device by students from National Central University. This Deep Space Radiation Probe, or DSRP, is Taiwan's first scientific instrument or payload to leave low Earth orbit and travel to the moon. Before launch day, I went to the school to meet Joyce Tseng. She's one of the students who created the DSRP. And I also met with Dr. Lauren Chang, the professor who oversaw the project.
One important thing I think that we play in academia is we oftentimes have the leeway and the need to take risks that other organizations, whether we're talking about corporations or government agencies, might not be able to or might not want to.
It was clear that they had a momentous task on their hands for Taiwan's scientific history.
In Taiwan, we've built a lot of payloads and small satellites for use in low Earth orbit, below 2,000 kilometers altitude, where most spacecraft are. But in Taiwan, we've never actually gone beyond low Earth orbit. Right. We've never gone to deep space. We definitely have never gone to the moon.
With no previous record, the DSRP team basically had to accept the huge risk and still find value in the mission, even if the probe did not work or does not make it to the moon.
When we screw up, we learn.
Dr. Chang's students started building the prototype for the DSRP back in 2021. What it does is measure radiation doses and other aspects of the harsh deep space environment. And though there's been over 140 lunar missions since the 1950s, there's still a lot we don't know about deep space. Zhou worked on the probe's software and testing, and even though it started off as just a school project, it's become much more than that.
因为这个机会，所以有可以更进一步去了解 deep space 跟 space 中的环境，还有不同的辐射环境是怎么样的去产生，然后可能会对一些仪器啊，或者是对人类有什么样的影响。那借由这个 project 就很启发，就是自己更有动力去看说，那未来我们还可以做什么样子的研究。
Space scientists around the world have rededicated themselves to the goal of having a long-term human presence on the moon. NASA's Artemis program, set up in 2017, intends to return astronauts to the moon in this decade for the first time since 1972.
On one hand, there's the science, the learning about our nearest neighbor, how it formed, evolved, because a lot of this can tell us about the early history and formation of our own planet. So, it's learning a lot about, the Earth-Moon system. There's also, the ultimate goal of having a more sustained human presence on the moon, having humans live and work on the lunar surface for long periods of time, and ultimately to get ready to send humans to Mars as well.
Dr. Chang says Taiwan's moon probe can provide key information to make such manned space flights safer.
If you're going to design electronics that are going to function in space, or even if you're going to send astronauts, then you need to be able to determine that given where you're going and how long you're there, how much energy from ionizing radiation your body is going to, or the component is going to absorb. And then based on that estimate, you need to design either a mission or a component or a product that is capable of surviving, functioning for the period of time that you need it to while absorbing that amount of radiation dose. And it's especially challenging because when it comes to radiation dose, it's not something you can measure through remote sensing methods. You actually have to fly an instrument through the environment you want to monitor. So the further away from Earth you go, the less data there is. So that's one reason why we selected this mission objective, because there are not a lot of missions that go to the moon.
Because the DSRP is hitching a ride on iSpace's Resilience lander, a big part of the challenge was that it had to meet very specific criteria. With ride sharing, you pay for an allotted spot on the spacecraft and you don't get much room to bargain. In the DSRP's case, the team secured 400 grams of space for their payload. Not a lot, and it could not consume more than 0.9 watts of power. An external hard drive draws more power than that. And another factor was that for the DSRP to measure radiation, it had to go on the exterior of the spacecraft. If it were put inside the lander, it would be sort of shielded from the ionizing radiation by the body of the spacecraft, which would affect the data.
We were able to design something that can withstand 33 times its own weight in terms of mechanical load, can actually either continuously face the sun on the lander and get to extremely high temperatures, or face cold space and go to extremely low temperatures, and at the same time be confident that we can perform the scientific measurements that we want and interface successfully with the lunar lander to deliver data that will be delivered back to Earth.
When the DSRP sends its data back, it shows up on this dashboard. And if things don't go according to plan, Zhou explains that there are ways to fix it from Earth.
那我们也有一些应对方案去做解决，跟 comment 的方案。对，那可能第一时间如果真的不能通得上，我们就是让它做 power recycle， 去看可不可以重新连接这样。
Zhou was sent to Florida to represent the DSRP team and witness the rocket launch on January 15th, 2025. Meanwhile, at National Central University, Dr. Chang and several of Zhou's classmates gathered to watch the historic moment on the big screen.
We had a smooth launch the first time, which is very nice. Doesn't always happen. Launch is just the beginning of the mission, so there's a lot more to go. But we're really excited to be able to go beyond low Earth orbit, go to the moon, and hopefully be Taiwan's first successful lunar payload on the moon.
At the time of filming this video, the DSRP is hurtling towards the moon. Okay, since filming that video, we heard that the Resilience is scheduled to land on the moon on June 6th. So we're heading to Tokyo, where iSpace is. We're headed now to iSpace's official watch party. It's 2:40 in the morning here in Tokyo, and the lander is expected to make its touchdown around 4:20 a.m. So it was a long day and a lot has happened. Let me pick up where we left off. Over 500 people gathered at the landing event to watch Resilience's descent. I was with the students from Taiwan who had flown in for the event, and just like everyone else in the room, they were quite nervous but very excited. Then when it came time to the multi-step landing phase, everyone just had their eyes glued to the screen, watching the flight data. But a few moments before the scheduled landing, Resilience's altitude dropped suddenly, and we were asked to wait for confirmation from the people at Mission Control. I've never experienced a room with that many people in it that just went absolutely silent. It was super tense. After over 10 minutes of silence and waiting, iSpace ended the watch party and said they'd let everyone know what happened to Resilience in a few hours. About 5 hours later, we sit down for the press conference with iSpace's CEO, Takeshi Hakamada, its CFO, Junpei Nozaki, and CTO, Ryo Ujiie. And they basically tell us that they have not been able to complete the moon landing. As for the Taiwan team, they were still very inspired by the mission and were proud that their DSRP worked.
So during this half year, so we do actually receive some science data. We do actually see the solar activities.
我们这个计划是第一次做超过地球以外的任务，所以对我自己也对台湾本身都是，我觉得是一个很大的光荣。
That marks the end of the DSRP's journey to the moon, and hopefully there's more to come.
These are all major milestones and things that we've learned. So for us, the next challenge is to figure out what to do next.
This has been Small Island Big Ideas. We've got more Taiwanese innovation stories that you might like. For more on space, come with me inside Taiwan Space Agency. Now, of course, one of the main technologies you think about when you think about Taiwan is chips. Check out this video where we break down the history and how Taiwan became so dominant in the industry and why they're so important to national security.